Okay, enjoy your flight. We'll see you in 20.
Cvac stands for Cyclical Variations in Adaptive Conditioning. Basically what that means is that you sit in the pod and we take you through changes in pressure, temperature and air to various levels of altitude. Through the process of changing pressure, temperature and air, we can oxygenate the blood cells themselves. So therefore, just by oxygenating the blood cells, we're oxygenating the brain, the eyes, the heart, lungs, all other parts of the body. New Hope Wellness is the centre here in Jacksonville where we're introducing Cvac to the general public.
Welcome to the Cvac system. Basically two integral parts. One is actually the nuts and bolts, as I'll call it. The second is the actual pod. Inside is computer programming. We have safety features all around. Computer monitor that the client can watch so they know when to clear the nose or clear the ears. And then the good stuff down here that we can't show you. But in the pod, we have safety features as well. Chewing gum, walkie-talkie for communication. Here, air gets sucked out. Up here, air gets pushed back in. That's what gives us the range of altitudes, depending upon how fast we pull it in and take it out. The history behind Cvac is approximately 20 years ago, a man by the name of Carl invented it for high altitude training with athletes such as marathoners, skiers, bikers.
Runners, that anybody that would normally go to high levels of altitude for training can now actually sit in the Cvac pod here in flat sea level Florida and experience exactly the same levels of training at altitude that they can if they go to Denver, Colorado or Kenya or wherever else they may go.
They found that it not only helped the athletes in the higher altitudes train and become better athletes at the lower altitudes, but also hidden benefits that started coming about a few years later.
We've been able to prove anecdotally in much of the case that anything that is blood related, mitochondrial, can be helped, can benefit from Cvac sessions.
At this point in time in the United States, there's just
about 24 in its entirety. A number of those are in research hospitals.
Some are commercial, but very few, and then some individual owners as well.
But available to the general public, I think there's probably about 10. This is new, bringing this to the general public, and that's what New Hope Wellness is fundamentally all about.
I've met Steve recently, the director of New Hope, within the past 6 weeks, and discovered Cvac and simply gave it a try because I was interested in human performance, wellness, life longevity, and generalized medicine, and I was tired of basically doing damage control, and my interest shifted to preventative.
A Cvac session is once you go through the initial tier 1 training, which is 5-minute sessions, then we classify. We ask them 11 questions with 3 answers to each question. And by default of their answers, which is all about them, it's kind of like, how do you sleep? What's your diet like? How much water do you drink? What's the structure of your hair? Are you overweight? What's your bone structure? Small, medium, large? We ask those questions, and by default of their answers, and there are no wrong answers, We can classify them and we can take them through the Cvac process. Everybody gets 20 minutes a session, but it's a different 20-minute session depending on the person.
Treating at altitude generally increases what we call erythrocytosis, or the improvement in red blood cell count that it has the oxygen carrying capacity. And that if athletes train at altitude, that it would enhance their sea level performance.
The first session, we already had plans to go swimming the next morning over at the beach and do a couple miles at the beach. And so I was pretty excited about the effect that Cvac was going to have on my performance in terms of the expansion I had already felt in my lungs almost immediately when I got out of the machine, but also the endurance.
First session, I felt really great as soon as I came out of it, and felt very restful that evening. And the next day we swam at Jacksonville Beach, and the second I hit the water I felt like sprinting. All my muscles just wanted to move.
Wasn't thinking about breathing, which is something you normally do as a swimmer. I didn't feel out of breath whatsoever. It's just I felt oxygenated, but it was to the point where I wasn't even aware of the need for oxygen when I was swimming. I didn't even think about it.
My core muscles were definitely engaged because you're having to breathe and then deal with the pressure, and you can feel your muscles getting engaged in the process too. And breathing a lot, so I feel like my lung capacity is expanding.
It was when I got out of the water that I wasn't even out of breath after swimming 2 miles. So it was quite exciting, the first one. So it was going to a second one was an exciting prospect.
I have my swimming equipment in the back, so I'm going to go right to the Y after this and use this juicing immediately.
Honestly, I'm 45, and I haven't felt that good in the water since I was a teenager.
By superoxygenating, or allowing more oxygenation to tissues in smooth muscle, skeletal muscle, it can enhance the recovery period.
There's probably been 8 to 10 locally that have come through. 2 that I'm involved with is Timmy Betros and Trevor Betros. Timmy plays running back for us at Bowles. A great running back. He had a minor injury. His recovery time went, I think, from 8 weeks to 2 weeks.
The first time I came in was because I hyperextended my elbow during a football game.
The main reason to have him come in originally was for shorten the duration of recovery, and now he's seeing the other side of the benefit, becoming a better athlete.
I feel very smooth and I'm working out, especially coming back on Mondays after a game, where usually I would be beat up a little bit. I feel smooth and I do feel stronger.
My son Timothy was on the highlight for the news for the Friday night game. He played this last game. He ran reverse for a touchdown, and the news commentator was talking about he was a fast
5 minutes
man.
to go in the half. Bowles goes to the reverse. Tim Betros around the right side, and he is what? A fast man.
I went 1 week without doing it, and my whole body was just achy, and you could really tell the difference. I wasn't nearly as smooth. Everything hurt. All my joints just hurt me and ached a little bit.
It primarily can be explained as a cleansing of the system.
I broke my foot on October 1st. When I went swimming at the beach the next day, I have this little rig I put around my foot so I don't hurt it any more than it is. I'm just wearing a shoe now. I don't have anything on my foot. I don't have a cast. I don't have any tape. I don't have a boot or anything. The swelling just went way down.
There's been quite a few studies over the past 20 years, primarily in Hawaii and on the West Coast, and with professional athletes, anecdotal studies. But endurance has improved, strength has improved, and VO2 max has improved.
People train for years to have minor changes in their VO2 max. And by oxygenating your blood and your cells and able to keep that high level of performance, I think every athlete could benefit from sitting in this machine.
There are a few precautions. If you cannot go up in an airplane, if you can't dive and equalize pressure in your ears, there's a small danger of barotrauma.
What the occupant is doing is the Valsalva maneuver, which helps take the eustachian tubes and keep them open. As she progresses in higher tiers, this will get easier and easier for her to do. At some point in time, she won't have to do anything. The eustachian tubes will be conditioned to handle all sorts of altitudes and drops.
So far, no one's been injured in one of these machines, ever, even with barotrauma. The safety is very, very high so far.
The occupant of the Cvac has a fail-safe, which is the ear and sinus button, which they have access to inside. So if for some reason their sinuses get a little bit painful, all they have to do is just click on that ear sinus button and then notify us in the walkie-talkie and we're back over.
The results so far are limited, but there's at least a 5.7% increase in VO2 max and human performance from one day to the next.
Trevor, he's a starting fullback at University of Christian and is a wrestler, and recently just won a big tournament in Puerto Rico, and he's having big gains and sees a lot of benefit from it as well.
Cvac, it affects me in my strength. I felt like in Puerto Rico, that was like the first tournament I had since using it. I felt a lot stronger in like my endurance. I could go a lot longer than I thought I was going to be able to go.
Trevor's always been a very good competitor and everything, but he does, it seems like lately he seemed a lot smoother and a lot faster, and hopefully it's Cvac, I don't know.
The length of benefit seems to be limited to 4 days. And that makes sense since the body needs to change over fluids and needs to get rid of its free radicals and be refreshed.
The US Open is probably one of the most well-known. Djokovic crashed out of the Cincinnati Open with a shoulder injury. And we flew our sports director from San Diego to New York City to treat the shoulder. During the 10 days run into the finals of the US Open, we Cvac'd him probably 30 times maybe. We were not only able to cure his shoulder, the pains he had in his shoulder, but we increased his VO2 max significantly and his energy levels, and gave him the ability to win the final at the US Open in the 4th set. Cvac as a process in the sports arena is not a form of cheating. It's just part and parcel of any other training regime. The sports authorities have looked at Cvac, and while some of them have claimed it to be unfair, nobody's actually said it's illegal or against the rules.
There are no chemicals involved, there's no steroid enhancement involved, there's no precursors to the hormonal system. This is simply training in atmosphere. For someone to object to that would be absolutely preposterous.
I wouldn't call it an unfair advantage, I'd almost call it maybe an equalizer. Our Olympic Training Center is in Colorado. The reason it's in Colorado is because the altitude training, it helps with your blood oxygenation. So it kind of gives you that same feeling here at sea level that the people training in higher elevations get.
I believe there's something very seriously there. There are some patients that are experiencing better sleep, better mood, certainly more energy. The energy is not just subjective, it's been measured.
Earlier, a little bit of a skeptic, so I don't just jump into something blindly. I sat through a couple of sessions myself and saw that there was a benefit and went and told my mother. My mother has trouble sleeping, which I think affects her mood and the way she's able to function throughout the day. She's been through probably 6 sessions herself now and is sleeping better than she's ever slept in her entire life, and people are seeing differences in her. She's got more energy, and that alone is worth its weight in gold. To be able to help a family member is awesome.